Okay, so we're back. To get a sense of the industrial output of the IVC, I want to now look at what kind of artifacts and goods have been found in these cities. And there's been a ton of this stuff. There are large finds of luxury goods as well as raw materials to make those luxury goods. There's quite a lot of terracotta pottery, potsherds, and toys. There are Bronze Age tools made from bone and stone and copper and bronze. There are also weapons, but surprisingly, there are very few of them. And the ones that are found tend to be like spearheads and arrowheads. There's no swords found at all in the IVC, believe it or not. Another remarkable set of finds are weight measures that are standardized across the entire civilization. So the same kinds of weights are found in Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, Kalibangan. This is kind of remarkable, I think, especially when you see how much kind of inconsistency and cheating there is in marketplaces in India today, where every weight is slightly different from merchant to merchant. In the IVC, they were all standardized to be the same weights. So here's some examples of Indus sculpture and terracotta figurines. Again, we don't really know the purpose of these artifacts. Scholars, of course, love to speculate about them, and you can speculate about them too. Animal motifs are quite commonly found in these images, ranging from cattle, buffalo, dogs, rams. There's exotic species like elephants and turtles. There's a series of peculiar seated male figures, which might be a particular religious devotional cult, perhaps. Or maybe these are servants or laborers. We don't know. Several examples of rather fine pieces of art have also been recovered. Busts like the ones you see here, and another one that I'm going to show you, the priest king, but then there's also dancing girls and a number of fascinating female figurines. Many archaeologists have considered these figurines with their kind of pronounced feminine features to be fertility symbols and perhaps used as part of goddess worship tradition. But were they really? Who knows for sure? Like if we take a look at a typical young girl's closet today, let's say, wouldn't we also find similar kinds of figurines with feminine features, right? Enhanced feminine features, but aren't these just Barbie dolls or whatever, right? They don't have to necessarily have a religious function, right? Now, there are, on the other hand, some good reasons to interpret these things as goddess figures. They're often elaborately decorated with headdresses and ornaments, much like you'd find Hindu goddesses depicted in today's iconography. And there's some indication on some of the figurines that they found burnt oil residue, which could maybe indicate some type of worship, perhaps. But again, we don't know for sure. Right? Another important piece of art that has had scholars going crazy is this fellow that you can see here. Mortimer Wheeler dubbed him the Priest King. He was found in the citadel area of Mohenjo-daro near the Great Bath, and Wheeler was convinced that this was an epitome of a fusion of religious and political power in the kind of singular person of a priest king, just like they'd found in Mesopotamia and Egypt and all of the other early empires at the same time period. Now, this fellow does look kind of regal, I have to say, with a neatly trimmed beard, no mustache, ceremonial robe, and an armlet, and a crest jewel on his head. It also seems like there were holes in his neck where a necklace would be added. But at the same time, he's only 7 inches tall, which to me would hardly seem appropriate if it's supposed to actually depict the priest king of the empire, right? So who really knows what what he's for? We do have to admit that he's impressive and really beautifully carved. Another thing I wanted to show you is a series of toys that have been found in the IVC sites. These are the first ones here are a fascinating set of toy carts, which are always solid, have solid spokeless wheels. They resemble carts in the rural hinterland even today. The one here is loaded with goods and is being drawn by a pair of oxen. We get a nice snapshot of village life in these toys, maybe. Archaeologists have also found neat kind of terracotta whistles like these, often in the shape of an egg or a bird, and also movable clay figurines of animals. This was a dog's torso and would have had a head and feet and tail attached by strings that would move like a puppet. There's also six-sided dice, a lot like the ones we use now, right? That were in Harappa. No one knows what kind of games were played exactly with these dice. And we're going to see actually dice and gambling figure a lot into our journey that we're going to be going through in India. It's a long gambling and dice have long been a part of culture and have long been evocative of a kind of the randomness of life and fate. Now let's turn to probably what people back then cared about the most, which was the jewelry that all of these IVC cities were manufacturing. They used a wide range of raw materials. Here's a basic list: gold, copper, silver, faience, which is a kind of quartzish ceramic, steatite, lapis lazuli, shellbone, terracotta, agate, jasper, carnelian, amazonite, and many, many other materials. It's really it was remarkable how many different kinds of precious and semi-precious stones were kind of brought together to make these beads and other types of jewelry. The workshops were located in these cities, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa primarily, but also the others, and the guilds would import the materials from all over the place. For example, lapis only exists naturally in Afghanistan and northwest Pakistan, in the mountains, deep in the mountains, and they would have been brought there from the workshops, to the workshops from there. Shells were procured from the coastal areas, and there's some evidence that jade and silk came from ancient China. People are still trying to nail that down. Jewelry is not all the same, of course, and crude terracotta bangles were probably meant for more common people, while only the more elite class could afford the more ornate necklaces and ornaments of semi-precious stones and gold and silver and so on. The economy was probably not a monetary one, actually. There's no coins that we found, so we do have to think carefully about what one means by elite. It wasn't by possessing money per se, but maybe goods of some kind, property, or other types of valuables. Here's a particularly interesting example of a lovely, finely crafted IVC necklace made of gold, greenstone, agate, jasper, and steatite. It's found in Mohenjo-daro in 1931 and dates to the mature Harappan period. It has an interesting story. Remember we talked about the politics and how they've interfered into the story of the IVC? Well, this necklace was so prized, such a prized possession, that during partition of India, it was divided in half, so that now today, half of the necklace sits in the museum in Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan, and the other half of it is in the National Museum in India, in Delhi. Now, we've seen a lot of clay or terracotta products so far in the IVC, figurines and bangles and all of that. But the largest production was kind of more utilitarian things like pottery. There are heaps of pots and potsherds all across the IVC area, not to mention urns and ladles and vases and all kinds of other containers. We do find the occasional copper and bronze object, like this copper ceremonial plate you might see here. Shell and bone were also given kind of utilitarian purposes. This is a shell serving spoon, for example. Now finally, one of the most mysterious finds across the IVC has been the thousands of little stamps or seals with writing on them and other images. They're pretty tiny. They're about 2.5 centimeters square bits of stone with animal or mythical motifs and a little patch of text that's carved into them. Now, even today, this script hasn't been deciphered, so we have no idea what these things were actually trying to say. Maybe they were used to seal jars or vessels or other containers of goods, like stamps you see here, but most of the seals don't seem to have had any wear and tear. So they don't seem to be used as much. So some scholars have suggested they weren't meant to be stamped, but just worn maybe as an amulet that might kind of tell people one's identity or religious affiliation. But this is all going to be guesswork because until we can read them, there's no way to know for sure what the seals are used for. There are other examples of IVC writing as well, on these like 3 or 4-sided tiny tablets. Again, we don't know what they're saying, but easily they could be of kind of like notes or messages, maybe like an address even to deliver goods to, who knows. Whatever it was, it probably wasn't decorative, right? It wasn't to show off, but it had some kind of practical purpose, this writing. Now, as we wrap up this section on the IVC material culture, I thought I could leave you with a kind of final takeaway image. Here's a close-up of what's called the zebu seal, a seal featuring the icon of a zebu bull, which is a typical Indian humped bull. You see them all over the place even today. His powerful but serene face perhaps typifies what the Indus Valley culture was like. Powerful but serene, right? It was economically and politically well organized and successful. It was prosperous, culturally vibrant. At the same time, it seems to have been largely peaceful, with little or no evidence of warfare or strife, which seemed to be working together towards building a society in which rural hinterlands and mining regions worked in tandem with these industrial cities to kind of achieve great things. Now, in the next clip, we're going to be talking about what scholars have been speculating about those great things that the IVC might have achieved, and I'll see you then.